And welcome to another Mark Bishop show. Occasionally, I get very excited when I get a first. My special guest for this show is Maurice Kemp. He's the CEO and president of Royal Caridea with Gen 2 technology. With what? Well, you're going to find out all about this. This is a world first in non-frozen fresh prawn farming. I love prawns. I don't know about you, but we're going to find out all about this. Welcome, Maurice. Nice to have you.
Good morning, and good morning to your audience. I thank you for in this interview, and hope to inform you about some interesting subjects that I've spent many years working on because of the interest in what needs to be implemented for our food source.
Well, we're going to find out all about it. You have a doctorate in, to give it a little bit of background about yourself, in medical microbiology with a specialization in virology, giving you a career in all the big three, really, academia, industry, and government, with your research interests emphasizing control of pathogens of both man and animals, including those of shrimp, working on the underlying mechanisms by which pathogens cause disease. Now, this is all important because of why we're talking about fresh. Now, to laymen like myself, Maurice, could you explain just a little bit on that?
Well, what I've been interested for all my life is stopping disease. It's a very serious issue, and it was always a consideration. If there's a noise in the background, that's the sound of freedom. I live next to an Air Force base, and there's a plane taking off right now.
That's all right.
So
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Now, listen, you also worked and developed pharmaceuticals, immuno-modulators, as well as chemical agents directed at microbial contamination of our food supply. Heavy stuff. I mean, it sounds like we should understand a lot more about food safety than what we think we do, Maurice. Is that correct?
Well, the ordinary person or the layman would think that we just add antibiotics to various kinds of food. It can, or animal, even animal feed. But that's really not true. We work to eliminate the antibiotics or any kind of material to food because they transfer into human beings. And what the result of that is they produce microbial resistant bacteria, etc. As we all know, we have COVID that's going around right now, influenza, respiratory syncytial virus, and we're all familiar with lots of bacteria that make you sick, and stomach bacteria primarily. But what most people aren't even familiar with is there's bacteria, that primarily listeria, that will grow in your refrigerator. And I tell everybody that I can go into your home and I can find listeria in your refrigerator.
God.
The potential for this is that they can make you very sick. And there's lots of stories I can tell you. For example, if you think about smallpox, they stopped vaccinating for it. Why did they stop vaccinating? Because immunocompromised individuals were developing lesions, and so we had to stop the vaccine for everybody. Mm-hmm. But even COVID, many years ago, I worked on COVID-related viruses at CDC because we knew there was an issue. But microbial contamination of food in the production process, or even coming out of a pond for shrimp cases or whatever, we have to do special things to make sure that the microbes will not grow in our food source.
They're very critical. I mean, you have a very diverse background. You spent many years working in government and academia on projects relating to disease control. And as a result of pharmaceutical consulting, you left academia, apparently. Now, what happened after that? Was this to prepare you for your next challenge?
Well, I left academia because I started working as a consultant for a pharmaceutical company, And it got to the point where the pharmaceutical company was calling me daily, sending airline tickets and asked me to help get there as fast as possible. And I found the work very interesting and was working on two aspects, an antiviral aspect and an enhancement of the immune system. Developed what's called an adjuvant material that would enhance the effect of a vaccine. And was looking at that time very interestingly at influenza and the HIV virus, and was found that we could change the glycoproteins or the proteins on the surface of these viruses and make them non-infectious, and so or potentiate the antivirals that were being used. So I left academia and went to the pharmaceutical research, and then ultimately, as happens so often in research, the company's stock surged, went very high, and a clinical trial failed, and the company went out of business.
Oh, boy. After all of that effort and study, I mean, it's critical what we eat. You're right. You mentioned about COVID, flus, this and that today. A lot of people don't realize it can come out of food that way. Chief Technology Officer for that company, you solved a lot of problems, both domestically and internationally, apparently, including when you were overseas in China and Southeast Asia. And that company was eventually sold. So getting to today and what you've invented. Now, who exactly founded Royal Caridea?
I was well aware of some research that was going on by a fellow named Addison Lawrence. Addison Lawrence spent better than 50 years working on shrimp. But he was a very, very interesting guy. And I was introduced to a problem in shrimp in Ecuador and asked to try and help them solve it. So as a result of a former company, some of the chemicals that I was working on, I put them on a carrier and we sent them to Latin America for introduction into the feed of shrimp. And we cured the problem that was an issue. But on the other hand, I started seeing systemic effects in shrimp, and I didn't know how to explain it. So I went to visit Addison Lawrence. And at that point, he showed me how he could grow shrimp at a very, very high level. And I was rather in shock when I first saw it. But at that point, I was intrigued. I knew that if you can grow shrimp under these conditions, you can change the world. And so I went back to the company that I was working with and started talking about with Mike Kuna, how we could set up a company to exploit the technology and develop it. And so Mike Kuna and myself set up Royal Caridea.
Okay. Now, you were aware, apparently, of technology developed and owned by Texas A&M University. Is that right?
Right.
And you licensed that particular technology. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
that was Addison Lawrence's technology, which he patented.
Okay. Then the technology allowed shrimp to be grown in what we call stacked raceways. Now, when I first read this and I looked at the site and I studied, I thought, oh my God, stacked raceways. It sounds like a kid's toy car fun in the old days. Have these little cars on our raceways. What did these do actually, Maurice? What are stacked raceways?
Okay. Stacked raceway is, you think of it like a rectangle, and you build raceways and literally stack them up. There's a rational reason for that. Late in the 1990s, Americans were involved in shrimp production in Texas and other areas along the Gulf Coast. But the technology in the United States was such that the climate prohibited more than one crop a year. Well, now you come along with the tropics and they can produce 3 crops a year in the tropics. So the shrimp industry moved offshore. So there was a consortium of organizations, primarily academic, that were interested in how to restore shrimp production to this country. And so you had to go inside and control the atmosphere, etc. So the temperature from and oxygenation and everything like this. So it was a question of building something inside in which you can grow larger amounts. So if I stack up raceways, I can grow shrimp in the bottom, I can grow shrimp in the next level, and etc. So I can grow quite a bit of shrimp in a stacked raceway system. So that's the origin of building stacks. Now there's another component that comes into that. You can just grow one crop in a raceway, or you can start transferring them from raceway to raceway at different phase in production. So every time you can do a phase response, you can increase production very, very dramatically. And in our system, which you can go to royalcaridea.com, and you can see a lot of things regarding our production system. But what this does is allows us to actually produce 13 crops a year. And our production can go from a few kilograms, or about 3 kilograms, or 6 or 7 pounds per square, 9 square feet or something, up multiples of 10. And thereby we got dramatic increase, and that's the basis of what we run. We run a synchronous production system versus a batch production system.
Right.
And that's factory increases.
Wow, that's extremely clever. I mean, so when we look back at trying to increase the orders of magnitude that you can do compared to the old-fashioned pond production, all this obviously can be done in a warehouse. So when you went back then and you got hold of that thing from Texas A&M, from what I'm understanding, when engineering became real, this is when you really found issues. So you abandoned that license and filed a new patent, which was issued over a year ago now. Is that about the story? Yeah.
Why we abandoned it particularly was because when you reduction to practice teaches you a lot of things. And one of them was that we were running an open stack system. In other words, they were raceways that were open on the sides, and the water was up in the 85 to 90 degree temperature. And the result of that, you get heat loss, high water evaporation, and things of this sort, besides the large volumes of water being used. And the result of that is your energy costs goes through the roof. Okay?
Right. I understand.
And so we decided, well, I can tell you exactly. The engineer I was working with looked at me and he says, maybe we can put this in a container and close it in so that it's totally enclosed. And so we went that way. The raceways that we're building now are really heavily engineered. They're stacked up. They're sealed to each other. And it looks like a race or an shipping container on the outside, but is a very sophisticated device compared to a shipping container.
That's amazing. So it's not like it's brand new either. You guys are very experienced in shrimp farming, what I call the old-fashioned way, with your ponds up there at Gila Bend in Arizona, I believe. And you've been farming, pond shrimp and selling it to various markets, like everybody else does. But now it's a different ball game, right? Your 8-stack raceways production system and unique world patent on this thing. This sounds amazing. When do you think that the fabricated raceways will be on site then?
They'll be on site late February or early March. They're currently in fabrication. We're back and forth on getting them painted and epoxy coating them to prevent water corrosion, etc., and any engineering difficulties that are change orders that have to be made. And they're being assembled at the moment. We're running these as a prototype stack, and things that we will learn on this project, we will convert into a final version. Examples, we need to put holes in the container, or not in the raceway, to distribute oxygen and water and feed, etc. And those will all be defined in the final project, and so they will be pre-engineered so that we can get them on site. We didn't only do this. We set up, we're spending time on developing a special aeration system and heating system, feed system, so that we can, my engineer, for example, asked me a question: how are you going to feed the shrimp? And I said, we're going to, do it with the machines or the old-fashioned way, open the gates or doors and look at and put feed in there. And he says, that's going to be impossible because you got too many raceways and you're going to need too many labor people. And so we had to develop a system for distributing feed. And so often the genesis of these things come from simple ask a question and we have to answer it.
Yeah, like Alexander Graham Bell, only 100 times before it came. The system, when built out, from what I understand, is going to produce shrimp, fresh shrimp, disease-free shrimp on an industrial scale. But I think I read 1.3 million pounds a year. I mean, you're looking to change the world with fresh shrimp.
Well, we decided to go after the fresh shrimp market because most people have never really tasted fresh shrimp. But there are communities that have had access to shrimp overseas, and they are very interesting. And we have found ways that we can distribute fresh shrimp into markets, and you'll be able to buy shrimp that are alive, even in the fresh shrimp market.
Wow.
And we're concentrating on that because we'll face it straight up. That's where you can make more money doing that than selling frozen shrimp.
Right.
Besides that, most people don't know that frozen shrimp that you buy in the supermarket is often frozen and thawed 3 to 4 times before you ever get your hands on it.
Yes, apparently so. And that is not good, right?
Well, it destroys texture and it can taste, but every step along the way comes back to these microbes, okay?
Yes, like you were talking about earlier, yeah. And we're eating this stuff. So, well, boy, in the research that I was doing and reading before preparing this interview with you, like my home country, Australia, as an example, we import something like 70% of the shrimp, from various countries, double frozen, as you say, and often even the ones grown in the ponds, they have to destroy so many because of disease. So this whole new concept and putting together that you're doing and raising funds on, I believe, is going to, eradicate all of that. The status of the American shrimp industry, just touching on this, Maurice, why does that really have to change, do you believe?
Well, the American shrimp market, there is a farmer in the United States can't be economically competitive with world shrimp production. And speaking of imported shrimp, the United States imports an unbelievable amount of shrimp that many people could never even conceive. We import something like 650 million tons of shrimp.
Gosh, that's a lot of shrimp.
Yeah, and over 90% of it that's coming in. The fisheries in the Gulf are starting to collapse. The trawlers are sitting in port because they can't get the decent price. Labor is becoming a question because people don't want to go to work in the sea for hard labor and little return. And secondly, even this shrimp that's coming on shore and processed, there is so much offshore shrimp in the storage in the United States that people can't even buy more shrimp because they don't have the capital.
Right. Well, it's funny you should bring that up. I was watching a documentary the other night on Chesapeake Bay, just, sharing about all the dead zones, what they're going through. And it's not the only place in the world, so it's going to get worse, unfortunately. Now, I was surprised, Maurice, at the lack of traceback in imported product and being a real issue health-wise. And why aren't all shrimp imports inspected? I don't understand that. So, Maurice, what is Gen 2 shrimp farming multi-phasic production? And where are you now with your company in what you're trying to do?
Gen 2 production is this production using the current technology. When we initially filed our patent, we had one set of technology and one development, but we don't stop implementing additional things. And so we developed additional production methodology, engineering principles, different aeration, etc., that have gotten better over the years because we have another facility on the farm that's got 4 in-ground raceways that we use for piloting various production methodologies and feeds, etc. And we test shrimp production using that. And we found better ways, and that's where we're at right now. And I'm actually getting ready to file what's called a continuation in part patent. I've gotten pretty good at patents. I have quite a few since I worked for other companies and stuff. And so I pretty much know what I'm doing.
Good idea. I think you need to do these days. That's a part CIP. Is that's got what's going to be filed?
Yeah, that's right. Why do we do patents? Because investors and technology protection rely upon something that they can lay their hands on, or at least in their thought process, they can visualize what we're talking about versus what we're doing. And they can read the patent and say this is, when the patent is issued, they know that there's substance to it because the patent agency, et cetera, will throw it out if it's not relevant.
That's right. And that's exactly right. And that's happened to a lot of companies. But in this case, very solid with what you have. I mean, I call it paper gold, if you know what I mean. You got a decent patent like you have and what it can do with this production. Boy, it's really a license to print money, isn't it?
Well, honestly, my goal has been to reconstitute the American shrimp industry. We think about importing shrimp. Well, yeah, we do that. But when you start to really think, at some point in not a very near past, China bought 50% of Ecuador's shrimp production. Very quickly, Ecuador is becoming the highest producer in the world. If another country is buying 50% of that production, what's that leaving for other countries?
Well, that's right. And it doesn't make it
pardon?
Healthy either, does it, Maurice, from what you were saying, That's more distribution.
Well, there's different ways of doing shrimp. Ecuador is starting to come along with the knowledge that you have to have sustainable production, and they're doing a pretty good job of that. But in other countries, it isn't even a concept. They produce, and there's a fellow named Robin McIntosh, and he's been telling them in Southeast Asia, less is more. Don't put so much in the pond, and don't try to increase concentrations beyond the level that everything can be sustained. But mainly there's a number of small farmers, maybe 2 hectares. and they consolidate this production into one big batch that they process and sell to you. Well, you don't know where that shrimp come from, one part of a country or another part of the country. Was it maintained in temperature or anything? And that bacteria, in many cases, will come in with the shrimp, and you can have a stomach bacteria that can provide a lot of harm to you.
Yeah, very nice. Interesting. Again, China getting their mitts onto this. And with what you just said, it gives food for thought. We talk marketing and sales because we haven't got all that much time left, but we talk about marketing and sales, the topic of target marketing as a priority in your world. What is target marketing in relation to your shrimp production?
Well, target marketing looks at a population that best serves our need in terms of the market. And one of the markets that we've decided to go after specifically is the fresh shrimp market. It's not fulfilled. There really isn't a fresh shrimp market in the United States to speak of, but there's a huge population. We looked at marketing in the Bay Area or San Francisco. We found that we could set up 2 plants in the San Francisco area, and we would not meet the market demand. And equally so, there's and these are particularly Asian populations, and they're used to obtaining fresh seafood, and they will pay premium prices for that.
Right.
So that's target marketing, is deciding on your client and meeting their needs.
So let me understand. We're talking restaurants, anywhere where food can be served, from, gambling houses, casinos, famous hotels, side strip, side mall restaurants, anywhere at all, fresh shrimp daily. Is that what you're saying?
Well, another one we're looking at seriously is grocery stores that have the display cases. You can go into virtually any Asian market and you'll find display cases with fish or lobsters, etc. And there may be a display case with occasionally with some cold water shrimp. But they will charge anywhere from $28 to $35 plus per pound of fresh shrimp.
Yeah, it's like a luxury to say. Yeah. We've talked about disease all the way through, how critical it is and what it can do to humans in food. I mean, disease risk is minimized with this whole concept of the Gen 2. How do you do it, and why is this particular question to do with computerization? Why is computer monitoring so important with the Gen 2 deal?
We have a lot of things going on in the stacked raceway system, okay? We have water temperature, ammonia control, salinity. We have the feed going in. We have waste products, so the feed going through the shrimp or the feed itself. All of that's, and we also, in addition to that, have a density of shrimp that grow to a certain level, and then we have to transfer it because if they get too crowded, they will die. And we have temperature, heating, and all of that. Well, we can place sensors in the system that can tell us everything that's going on pretty much in a given raceway. And even right now, we're talking about 8 raceways in a stack. But we're going to have multiple stacks. We can't have people monitoring all of that kind of thing on a daily or basically a timely basis, going around measuring. So we feed it back to a central computer, and if something goes wrong, we get an alarm, and we can check out what the issue is right away.
On top of it, yeah, you can't beat that. That's critical. See, it makes it science is right there with it. So from what I'm hearing, Maurice, Royal Caridea, with the patented Gen 2 unique system, you'll never offer frozen delivery. but the choice of fresh live shrimp, and it sounds like 24/7, 365. Is that right?
Well, one of the things that's important to understand, too, with a system like this, we can produce shrimp every day. It's available 365 times a year. If you have pond-based shrimp, when you pretty much have to harvest the pond in total. Maybe you can take some out for 1 or 2 days, but it's a single harvest. We have a harvest availability that we can pull it out of the system every day and send it to market. Now, to say that we'll never sell, I wouldn't go that far, but mostly it'll all be fresh and sold that way.
Well, I got to ask you this question because I'm another shrimp on the barbie for me, but the other side of the coin, there's not a lot I can get into these days, but if I wanted to get in on this winner, how can I invest in it, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, we're currently going through a B series of sales of interest in Royal Caridea, and that means monetary investment in the company. And we have, at this point, set up a WeFunder account, and so we're raising capital at WeFunder, one word, .com /Royal Caridea.
Okay.
And on that page, you'll find a lot of information about shrimp there as well. It'll be an educational venture just to go there.
All right. That's simple enough to do, isn't it? And then it's up from there. And now we're talking America, firstly. Any other countries that you've got, in line after?
We have interest from a lot of countries. We target first world countries because it's a capital-intensive project. I can pretty much tell you that it won't go into what we would call third world countries. They would like to install it, but the fact is it's just capital intensive.
Right.
The other thing is that what we want to do is maintain, it's not control of the equipment or anything. We want to maintain an interest in it because I don't want to be trying to solve problems when somebody has jerry-rigged a certain equipment.
Right.
I gotta know what's going on.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. But look, folks, I've got to get out of this now. But here's the deal. Check this out. Go to royalcaridea.com, do some research, do some study, have a look at what everything we've talked about is there. But then if you want to, get on a winner for 23 coming up and further, have a look at wefunder.com /Royal Caridea. And very affordable to get in. I know I am. But anyway, Maurice Kemp, thank you so much for the time you've given us. It's very interesting, very informative. And I wish you well with this project. I really do, because it's not about just making money. It's about keeping a lot of people very healthy. And that's exceptionally
Well, I've been at it for quite a few years and intend to stay at it because it's a definite interest to me. And I thank people for their interest. And I think they will find a lot of interesting things.
Good. Well, you can do that too, folks, by going to youtube.com /watch. But you'll find Royal Caridea on there. They're also on facebook.com, Arizona Desert Shrimp. That's facebook.com /Arizona Desert Shrimp /. And, of course, the big one as we're talking about is WeFunder. All right, wefunder.com /Royal Caridea. Or just go to the website, www.royalcaridea.com. Thank you, Maurice, CEO, president of the company, a co-founder, and you're going to hear a lot about it. Royal Caridea. Thanks for sharing the time with us.
Bye-bye.